Tonight, we are going to be the first part of a three-parter on the City Slicker quilt. And tonight we're going to talk about prepping and cutting your fabrics. We're making two versions of the quilt. We're making the Tula Pink with Pinkerville, which we love this magical Pinkerville fabric. And then we've got the Kaffe Fassett version here. And then we also have, if you watch this space over to your right, we've got the what's coming in June quilt. And so each week as we go through our May sew along, you're going to see this space over here. We're going to see what is developing as we sew ahead of you and get that June quilt done, which is the fabulous sunburst pleated log cabin quilt that we've customized and designed specifically for our group and as an alternative to the Kaffe Summer Sew Along quilts. If you want a little more challenging quilt, that is the quilt for you. So each week, I usually give a tip of the week, and then we talk about the quilts and the totes, but tonight we have a lot to talk about in prepping for this fabric and for this quilt this week. So I'm going to give you homework. You're going to do the homework each week in preparation for the next week's assignments, because we're going to get through this quilt in 3 weeks. I know a lot of you guys have started projects and then they become UFOs, and so I'm going to challenge you to get through this quilt and post it on the wall before we start the next quilt in June. There will always be a break in between, and the break at the end of May, we're going to be talking about that cathedral quilt that we started in Tula, and quite honestly, it's been a challenge for us to kind of work out all the measurements, but we've got it done. So now we're going to show that to you at the end of May, and you're going to be able to pick up that quilt and start that quilt at the end of May. And then we're going to do another version of that in Kaffe Fassett collective fabrics during the summer. So that's very exciting because in July, we're doing Christmas in July. And so we're going to do a ton of great quilts, and we're going to do that cathedral in Kaffe Christmas colors. Okay, so let's talk about the supplies you're going to need to do the City Slicker in Tula Pink first, and then we'll do the City Slicker in Kaffe, which is a little more tricky depending on what fabrics you purchase. So the Tula Pink quilt is going to be our first topic. Now, you guys know the drill. I want you to go into your chat message for me if you're live tonight and not watching this on a pre-recording. And I want you to go in and I want you to chat and say, yes, I can hear you. So please let Chris know, who is editing and monitoring our session tonight, that you can hear us. And if you have any technical difficulties, you can always contact him via the Facebook group, or you can call him or text him on his phone, 904-699-0662. Okay, so the supplies you're going to need for the Tula Pink. Now, the Tula Pink quilt is fabulous. Like this fabric, I saw pictures of it, and it was like, okay, I kind of like it, but the fabric, when it came in person, is just stunning, stunning. So I want to talk about the options that we've done. And Serena is sewing the Tula with me. She's been great and very patient because I have her swap fabrics around and swap the crosses around. And I put a funny little post up on the Sew Along with Georgie Girl wall that you can go check it out, because she'll send me a picture of these crosses and I'll say, oh, switch A with A. And then I'll say, switch block B with B. And we do this until I get the colors laid out the way I like it, where there's an even distribution of pink crosses and purple crosses and blue crosses, and they're not all gathered in one area of the quilt, and they're, you know, distributed equally between the rows and the columns. So you have two options in our kit, or you can go to one of our featured shops who's carrying Tula Pink, and you can get the supplies you need. I'm going to go over what those supplies are. They're also at the Petting Fabric website under the kit link, so you can always go to that link and get your supplies that you need this is good for the May sew along. The June sew along is a private pattern here. So you will need, for the sunburst, you will have to buy a kit to get that pattern. In this sew along, this pattern is also private. It's by Highway 10 Designs. And once you have purchased that pattern, you will get supplemental pattern instructions from us in week 2 and week 3. So make sure that you PM me if you don't have it and you'd like those additional instructions. But I'm gonna walk you through what materials you need right now. So to make this kit, you need you need the following items. You're going to need the actual material for the blocks. You'll have a background fabric, and then you'll have the printed fabric. Now the printed fabric, you could get a fat quarter set of Tula Pinkerville, and I'm going to tell you what fabrics in here you don't need for this kit because it will conflict with the bindings and the sashing. You could also do, we worked out the math, and you could do a 10-inch square and a 5-inch square together, and that would be enough to make this quilt in a queen size. And then this is a generous jelly roll right here. Love this jelly roll. You could make this jelly roll, use this for your quilt as well. And when you're going through your fat quarters, so we're using fat quarters for our kit, and there's some beautiful fabrics in here. You've got, they almost feel like home decor fabrics. I know it's hard. I wish on the computer we had like smell-o-vision and feel-o-vision. You could see how great these fabrics are. But these are beautiful swans here. I'll hold that up for you. And the fabric is thick. It's a really nice texture, and I mean, it feels like home decor fabric to me. And some of these prints are just really glorious. Like I'm going to show you this one. This is something, a more updated version. I wish you could see a close-up of this. It's got a beautiful scallop with the pink in the middle. That's a beautiful piece of fabric right there. So these fabrics, you need to divide them up. You need to determine what you think will work in your crosses. So we're going to walk through these for the crosses in just a second, but let's finish talking about the supplies. So once you have your base fabric, you're going to need, this is a background. You can see it here quilted on my table. I'll show that to you in a moment. But I had 3 yards of this beautiful fabric quilted, and I'm going to be cutting this up to make a glorious tote. So this is going to be, next week we're going to talk about totes, and I'm going to tell you about this fabric and how I'm going to cut this fabric up. But just a regular background fabric is cut into this strip, which is going to be one of our double borders. So we're going to use our printed fabrics for the crosses and the corner pieces. This is called fairy dust, and that fairy dust is what you're going to need for your background fabric. It comes in 3 colorways, a teal, a purple, and a cream. All right, so that's your fairy dust in the cream. And then your fairy dust in the purple right here, okay, which is called Daydream, is a sashing option. So I have it here in between my crosses, so you can see a simulation of it. And then I've got the purple background, it's kind of like a marble purple background. It's gorgeous. This will be one of your borders. And then I've got the iris stripe, which is the binding. On your other option, you could go with the teal fairy dust, which is called Frolic. So you could have the teal fairy dust, this purple diva. If I skipped it, this is the purple diva right here, purple diva. And then this is the background in Frolic. The backing that she has at 108, I'm also using it as a border. And then the same iris binding. So one of the things you're going to see us do this week is we're going to put up some basic instructions in the sew along group, and it's going to tell you the materials you need, which is also in a kit on the Petting Fabric website, so you can get the measurements or the material quantities out of both places if you want. Go shopping, get it, let's prep, let's start cutting. If you're getting a fat quarter or even a jelly roll in this line, it will be enough. And you're going to want to pull out certain fabrics, and you're going to go ahead and cut your crosses first. Once you cut your crosses, then you can figure out what you want on your corner pieces. So this week's homework assignment is to get your materials and cut your crosses out. And then with your leftovers, figure out what you want for your corner pieces. Now I'm going to give you a couple hints of what you don't need. So I'm going to open up this fat quarter set I have right here. I have some of the fabrics laid out, but I want to go through them with you real quick, one by one. So depending on which fabric sets you're going to go with, the colorway of the purple, which is Daydream, or the teal, which is called Frolic, you will want to pull out of your kit those fairy dust fabrics and set them aside. You'll want to use your swans, and you'll want to use, this is the unicorn. Isn't it beautiful? I'm going to show it to you. It's stunning. It's really stunning. And we did fussy cut out the flowers, the crosses. If you have a fat quarter, you can cut and fussy cut your flower sections out, because I did the flowers in the center of the cross, and then I had Serena cut the actual unicorns for the corners. You can't fit a whole unicorn in the corner, but you can fit enough of it. It looks pretty cool. Then, of course, your beautiful scallops and these owls. These owls are stunning. I wish you could see it up close, and I have a couple pictures on the wall, but you can see here the little eyes on the owls, and it's adorable. And we have it cut right in here on the cross. So I don't know if you can see this on YouTube or on the webinar tonight, but that's adorable right there as you're looking at the quilt. It's looking back at you. Now you're going to see some of these fabrics in your fat quarter that are similar to the background. These have a sea monster floating in the lagoon. These you need to set aside because this will conflict with your binding and your background and your borders. You have your borders here and your background, same fabrics, to set that one aside. This particular fabric is really pretty. It's a green on purple, but this fabric does not have the depth that you need to match the other crosses. So this is a corner border fabric. This is not one that we chose to put in our crosses. We're using it just for the corners, and then we're going to use it for some accent pillows. Then we have the teal fairy dust. Now I'm using the teal fairy dust in my quilt because I'm doing the purple Daydream version. So you will see that I have the teal right here in the corner because this teal fairy dust will go against my purple Daydream sashing. It won't be teal on teal. So you need to think through that when you're deciding which colorway you want to make for your sashing, because if you're going to do teal, then you pull the teal fat quarter out. If you're going to do the teal, the purple Daydream, then you'll pull the Daydream out and set aside. The other one you need, because you need these corners, because we're making queen size. So in all this Sew Along with Georgie Girls, we've decided to do queen size. Everyone voted on the Kaffe Fall, I believe it was, on the Kaffe fan group at the Kaffe Fassett Support Quilt group at Facebook, and we voted on what is the standard queen size that's most popular, and that was around 96 by 102 or 108. So we will always be trying to accommodate that sizing. And this quilt, by the way, this quilt, even though the pattern that you buy from Highway 10 Designs has the size on it as, I don't know what the exact size is because we've modified it. So we've modified it to be 96 approximately by 108. And I say approximately because it depends on the borders that we add, and I'm going to show that to you as we go along in week 3. But let's continue with fabrics. So this is a beautiful scalloped in a light teal and pink. You will use this one. You'll use the swans in teal, and you will probably use this beautiful marble. So this is the kind of a key that you need to figure out. I did use some of these marbles inside of our quilt. I used the pink and the teal. We are undecided if we're going to use that purple one that I had you pull because everything's purple and it might blend too much. But it kind of depends when we get to those blocks. If we feel like we need to balance more purple, we'll insert it. This green is a strong green. This is a strong cross. This is one of the more bold ones. So we had this one that was more bold, and then we had this purple and green that was a little too soft for crosses. So be mindful. That's our big word of this decade, isn't it? Mindful. Be mindful when you're cutting these crosses and you're matching up your corners. And I'm going to have a tip for you how to lay those out. But this cross is a strong, deep colorway that you will not probably want too many of. I think we have 2, maybe 3 crosses in ours. Then I've got the owls. Just going through these one by one so you know what we're keeping and what we're not. Okay, the unicorns in teal, beautiful. I mean, most of you know I'm not a super big green fan. Love this fabric, love it. It's got beautiful blues and whites and pinks in there. Okay, this has to be set aside for a pillow because this fairy dust and cotton candy is our background. So we can't put a cross with this or we would not see the cross as the background color here is the same fabric. But it will be great for us to use in a pillow. Again, I'm coming to a yellow, orangey yellow with a teal flower. This is a hard one to fit into the quilt. You can try it on a corner, and I'm going to set it aside because it's not going to be a cross for us. And then we have the pink owls, and this fabric is stunning. This is probably my favorite cross. This is a pink with a white or pinkish type of flower on it. Stunning cross. That's going to be one of the crosses that I put right in the middle of the quilt, but definitely on my side of the bed. I want to see this cross when I'm laying in bed with that quilt. That's beautiful. That's definitely going on my side. And then we have the pink swans, gorgeous. And then we have the pink marble, and I'm using this as a cross as well. Very pretty. And lastly, I think I already came to this one, which was the pink unicorns. So that's how we're breaking down these fabrics. There's very few that we're setting aside, very few. You know, the cotton candy, the 2 flowers here are corner pieces, but not crosses. And then depending on the colorway, maybe we'll do a purple cross in this marble, maybe not. It kind of depends on how many we need. The version of the quilt that we're making has 7 crosses across and 6 crosses down. And you're going to need to get the pattern to get the exact measurements of each panel that you're making, and you're going to follow those directions. But I want to talk to you about the block B and C. So block A in the pattern is for your crosses. Group B and C is really essentially the same blocks. And so think through when you do your corner blocks, how you want to organize them. And this is what I suggest. I suggest with the Tula Pink, so we're just talking Tula Pink right now, and then we're going to jump into Kaffe. So when you're doing your Tula Pink fabrics and you're cutting your blocks, I would group them not by color, but by type of pattern. So I would put all of the marble type of sea monsters in one pile, all the bright and bold flowers in another pile. I would then take my fairy dust and put in another, my swans in one, All the swans have a real deep connection of color, and I really like that. So I like to put them together with the flower. There's a pink on pink flower. And then I put the owls in a pattern. So the swans go in one stack and the owls go in another stack. And the reason for that is when I get my corners going, I want not the same patterns in the 4 blocks. So that's going to be the challenge is when I look at this cross and it's got the owls in the center, I don't want to see owls in the corner. So the patterns are really important that these are separated by patterns. And if you can figure out the combination of patterns to 5, then when you pull across that an owl, you have 4 other sets of corners you can pull from. Does that make sense? So that's really, you're cutting all your crosses first. You're going to lay your crosses out. You're going to pull across like I did here. Got the owls. The corner pieces are not going to have an owl in them, which you have 4 other stacks. So if you stack and arrange your fabrics in a total of 5 stacks, you can match up what the other 4 that you need. So then when you go to these other 4, you want to make really sure that you figure out and organize your blocks before you sew. So I would lay all your crosses out, like my example on the Sew Along with Georgie Girl with Serena and I laid out all the crosses first. And then very specifically, you want to make sure that if you have a green cross in the center, that none of your 4 blocks are green. That's rule 1. So when you're grabbing the 4 out of the other sets, don't grab green. The second thing you want to do is you want to make sure that some of these are bold and some of these are subtle. So if you're going to pull one of these scallops and it's more subtle in a little section, that's a lot more subtle than one of these pink flowers. So can you see the difference? Very bold, subtle. Very bold, subtle. You'll notice that when you start to sew them. So sew them across from each other. Make sure that you have a subtle one here, okay? And don't put 2 subtles at the top. So you might have subtle, subtle, bold, bold. And you do them crisscross from each other so that bolds are on one side and subtles are on the other. So never do you have all your bolds. You don't want them all gathered in the same area of your quilt. So if you have them at the bottoms and the tops, there's too many here together. But if you crisscross them, then you put your bolds on each corner on one way and your subtle ones on the opposite way. You will always have a nice little balance as you put these crosses together. But just remember the golden rule. Do not put the same colors in with that cross, and do not put all 4 or subtle depths or bold depths. Kind of balance it. So you have your piles of fabrics, and then, you know, your unicorns and flowers are very bold. You'll see this. When you start to cut them and you lay them out first, you're going to see that. So you're really going to be able to pick that up very quickly. So that's kind of our tips on going ahead and cutting your crosses first. Get all those cut and laid out in Ziplocs. And then cut your fabrics for your even distribution of corners. And then lay those out into 5 different piles by pattern. And then you can start assembling. And I would lay them out on a design wall. If you don't have a design wall, you clean your floor. You can use your kitchen table. You can use your bed and put a white sheet on there just to help you kind of organize. Take a photo with your camera. Turn it to black and white and look at your color depth. And then you'll know what I'm talking about on some of these bold and strong colors. So that's your homework for the week, is to organize your printed fabrics, cut your crosses, cut your corners. Only cut the corners that you need to the pattern if you have a fat quarter, because you're going to have extra, and you want to save the extra fabric as a whole for your pillows. And then get all of those organized and ready to sew. Obviously, you want to sew your background out first and have those done in Ziploc. So when you're ready to start sewing, you can start sewing. And I want you to start sewing your blocks together. So you're cutting and organizing and sewing your blocks. Next week, we're going to talk about arranging these blocks a little better. So now if you get each block balanced, then we're going to talk about arranging the crosses in a logical manner that doesn't congregate too much in one area for one color, okay? And then we're going to talk about sashing and borders in the last week. Okay, so that was a long explanation there on the Tula. So let's now talk about the Kaffe that we have. So the Kaffe fabric has a couple different options. We're making this quilt right in both sections. And for the Kaffe I put behind me, I want to talk to you about some tips and tricks to this fabric. We are using the night and day. So going back to what we talked about with the Tula, you can get 10-inch squares and a 5-inch charm pack. These together will allow you to cut out your crosses. Back quarters are always great because you're going to have extra fabric. And then you've got 6-inch strips, and you have jelly rolls. And the jelly roll is behind me. So when we started pulling these jelly rolls and cutting them, my jelly rolls are a little different than the jelly rolls that I sent Colleen. So you're going to see pictures on the wall. As soon as we get done, I'm going to put up, if you want, just, you know, go to the Georgie Girl, So Long with Georgie Girl wall. Let me know if you'd like to see our crosses that we're making and the exact fabrics. I'm happy to share them. I didn't use them all. But I'm going to walk you through if you're going to use both a night and a day, because I have both a night and a day pack that I'm using. All right. You don't have to use both. You can use one or the other, but I'm going to be very specific with my Kaffe quilts, and I'm going to split up the fat quarters by pattern, and I'm doing all my crosses and flowers, and then we're going to try and experiment and see if we can do all the fun corners in things like the zigzag and the jumble, and see how that looks for you. So we'll be ahead of you by a week or two, so you can see once you start cutting out your flowers, if you want to use flowers on the corner or if you want to use some of these other fabrics. One back quarter would do, a jelly roll would do. I'm just combining both, the best of both worlds. There are some fabulous flowers in the night and the day, and so that's what I wanted for my quilt. Now with this quilt, I just got a simple jelly roll of mist. So in the Kaffe version, we have a cream background. You can get cream designer fabric just about anywhere. And there's a lot of great fabrics. I don't know that I would go with a pure white or a too heavy of a cream. You could use an Aboriginal dot. If you get an Aboriginal dot with Kaffe, I would do like the white with the blue dots called water, because there's a lot of blue in this quilt, or there could be a lot of blue in this quilt depending how you cut it. So we're going to talk about my options, and then what I am going to do for my Kaffe version is I'm going to use this Blue Enchanted, which has become like my favorite fabric of all time. I think some of you guys, I might have put a picture up of a binder that I just covered in this. This is like my favorite fabric. So this fabric will not be a cross because this fabric will be my sashing. So this is what I'm doing for my sashing. And then I'm probably going to use this somehow in a binding or a border, definitely a pillow. So we're working out the border options right now for this, but this is the sashing that I'm going to use. And it comes in the fat quarters and it comes in the jelly roll. So this will be the first one that you will exclude from your list. Okay? Now, all right, if you're dealing with a jelly roll, that's the next segment of this session. Just check the time. Okay, so we have about 25 minutes left, and I want to spend it on cutting the fabric for the Kaffe quilt. So I did not use all, if you use 2 jelly rolls and you pull out the flowers for this quilt, like I did, you're going to have a lot of extras that you don't need to use. And what I decided to do was pick and choose the sections of the jelly roll strip that accommodate my color palette. I felt like there were a lot of greens and a lot of teals, and I wanted to kind of balance the full rainbow of colors in the quilt. But in doing so, I found that there's a couple unique pieces of each jelly roll strip. Now, I will tell you that some of our strips and the ones I sent Colleen, when she and I started working with this, it was not 44 inches. And that was a little bit of a problem. So you have a couple options. You can size everything down in the pattern by 1/8 of a cut. So if you go through the pattern, make a Xerox of your official copy, and then change everything, you know, down 1/8 of a size, then you could cut out of this jelly roll strip. But what I ended up doing was, anyone who had a jelly roll kit from us, just, you know, PM us, and we were going to Kaffe it forward an extra cut for one of the cross arms. So this is the main body of the cross, and then the arms of the cross. That's what we're calling that. So we also cut 3 of the centers out of one, 5 of the centers out of another, and that combination of cuts will really, you know, works out mathematically really well for you. So I can explain that more on the Sew Along with Georgie Girl wall, but right now I want to get into colors and how to cut out some of these fabrics. So let's go behind me for a second. So in these flower strips, and that's what we're going to talk about first, this is a beautiful yellow strip of fabric with all the flower. When you lay them out, you're going to be able to see how you want to balance the colorways to your palette. For me personally, we went through and made sure that in these particular strips, that this is the enchanted strip. So each one of these enchanted, which is this yellow here and this green version here, okay, so we went ahead, and then the purple and green. There's a particular flower that I really, really love out of these, and Colleen, God bless her heart, you know, has learned, she's kind of learned my personality now, and so I hope I don't frustrate her too much, but I wanted her to fussy cut out the daisy. So there's this daisy in green with the yellow leaves. It's just stunning. And so this particular flower, and then there's a little yellow version, smaller version. These are my body and arms to my crosses. Those are the pieces I definitely wanted to get into the cross. And then when I have these bigger flowers here, like this blue and yellow one, and then we have another one over here, which is this black one. You know, she was kind of like, you want that black flower? And I'm like, yeah, I want that black flower. Because when we cut this and we center the middle of this flower as the center here of a cross, and you can do it either way. You can take this and split this into 2 arms or into the body. And when you do that, that's stunning. And then you can take another piece of this that has a little black in it like this and cut that out as a cross arm. So those 2 flowers together made a stunning cross. And I think I put a picture of that up on the Sew Along with Georgie Girl wall. And so you'll want to check that out. Let me put this back up. Okay, so that's kind of one of the tips that I want to talk to you about, is when you take some of these stunning flowers that you like this blue one here. All right, take it and fussy cut this into the center of your cross or into the arms. And you're going to love the effect and look of that guy. Then as you're doing this other piece here, I'll remove this so you can see it. When you're doing this one, all right, look at it closely, and you're going to see that there's a lot of purple in this. And purple is not one of the more dominant colors in the night and day. So you will definitely want to use some of these pieces that have pink and purple in them, because that's a great way to introduce that color into this quilt. Now, these three have a lot of green. And so I'm going to remove this real quick so you can see this guy. What we did with this guy is we came through and we said, all right, the daisy with the yellow, I definitely want. So that was a key piece of the cross. But then we pulled a lot of the blues out. So we cut a lot of these pieces of flowers that had blues, and that went into the cross. Because blue, you know, again, is a color that I want to introduce into this quilt. All right, so let's talk about the feathers. Now, I love the feather fabric that Philip has designed. And what I really love about it is the little eyes. I mean, to me, the little feathers, they have this little circular design on it. It looks like two little bunny eyes. And I love that about this fabric. So this yellow piece, both of those yellow pieces made it into the quilt. With this blue and red one, I felt like there was a lot of reds as I went through a lot of these fabrics. You're going to see there's a lot of reds. And I'm going to show you a little hint of next week when we talk about corner pieces. So the cave quilt is a little different. We're not going as fast with the cave quilt as we are the Tula, but we're going to end up on the same schedule. But with the cave, you really have to take your time and fussy cut out your flowers. And so when you do that and you stage them, then you can figure out where your other pieces go. Because, right, you're going to hopefully get two crosses out of the strips that you really like. If you're short one piece, again, we'll help you with that. Just contact us. Now, the other pieces of flowers that we took, that we had to deal with, were these particular strips here. So all these strips right here, and I'm going to take these down so you can see those better. Okay, these strips here are really, really adorable. And we took them and we made them, this one has, the pink one has a purple going through it. So depending on how your cut is, when I sent her my set of strips, she got a purple like right down the middle. It was super pretty. So it's going to be really neat to see that in the cross. However, these are cut at an angle. Like the two I sent her, the jelly rolls, they were drastically cut at angles. So, and these just have a slight variation. You can see right here in the green, see how the brown flower starts in the bottom, and then it comes off the end in the middle, and it comes back inward. So pay attention to your directional cuts, especially these flowers. There's 3 or 4 of these different colorways that are in your kit. What you need to do is you need to take your strips and you need to decide how many you want of this flower. And then when, in this example where it comes off the middle, you'll want to fussy cut the flowers that are in the center here as maybe the middle of your cross. And then come to the other side and try to find something very similar to that exact cut for the middle. If you cannot do that, then get your 2 middles as closely as possible, and then go get things like this where the ends, okay, do your arms here. You just need to find the largest segment that's similar for the center of your cross, and then you can fussy cut your arms out of these pieces. So for this reason, this was a little more challenging. So for these particular flowers, I don't have as many crosses because I used both strips to make a cross the way I wanted it. So I won't have as many crosses of these, whereas these other flowers are more forgiving, so I was able to do that. This is, again, this is another enchanted right here with this big red and yellow flower. That's really pretty. I'll take this off so you can see that. That's another beautiful flower, and that was in the center of one of our crosses. This guy was great. I'm going to show this one to you. Okay. It won't stay. Okay, so this particular flower, when I did this one, this has some teal, a lot more teal in it. And so this strip, I really had to sit down and go through with Colleen, and she was great about figuring out what appealed to me in my cross. So we centered that fabric. When you get to some of these fabrics, and I'll find the match to that guy right here. When you get to these fabrics, you're going to see that, like this one has that bright purple. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a bright purple flower right here. And you're going to want to measure out the center of these crosses because the big flowers look stunning coming off the center of that cross, right? So that's what really makes this particular fabric work really well in this pattern. It's just stunning the way you can cut out these flowers. And so think about that if you're using a fat quarter, that you will want these daisies to be part of your center of your crosses. Okay, so you will cut, like I said before, 3 centers out of one strip and then 5 centers out of the other, and then you can fit almost all your arms in here. The other thing you could do is, if you're not a beginner and a more intermediate, you're used to adjusting your pattern just a little, and you can adjust all the sizes down 1/8 of a yard cut, and you'll be fine with your jelly roll strips. But take one jelly roll strip pattern that you don't want in your quilt and test your theory of how you want to cut, and then Xerox your pattern and make all of your adjustments. Okay, so now, after you get through your center flowers, you have a choice. You can make all your corners out of your scraps, or what we're going to do next week is we're going to show you all these wonderful fabrics here that we're using as corners as they're cut. But I'm going to go ahead and show you which ones they are. So all these wonderful new fabrics with the squares and the circles in them. Okay. Beautiful fabrics. These are going to be our corner pieces, which I'm going to show you different ways that you can cut out this zigzag to complement your cross. You can cut it both ways to make your corner pieces. Truly great. So here we have the colorways in other colors. All right, and then this is a wonderful fabric. I have a pillow in this. I don't know if you guys have seen in some of my previous webinars, I had a gray and black pillow in this fabric. And then more of the zigzags. So lay your zigzags out. There's some really dark zigzags, and depending on how you got your jelly roll strip, if you're dealing with a jelly roll strip, you might have some darker pieces. And if you use both jelly roll strips, you're going to have enough to pull out. I think I pulled out 6 that didn't go for me. So you want to sort these and then use those accordingly to zigzags and then the jumbles. This blue jumble and the yellow jumble, beautiful in this quilt. Okay, and I'm not a jumble person, and I love this fabric in the corner of this quilt. So that's a fabric that I'm also using in the pleated sunburst log cabin. I'm just amazed at how well this goes with this whole line. Okay, so that completes the initial prepping and cutting and selection of your crosses for our session tonight. Next week, we're going to have more time because we're going to talk about laying out our blocks and how to lay out the different colors together and where to place them in the quilt. And so because we're going to have more time next week, we are going to talk about, we're going to continue our tote series. So I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for that, and we're doing the tote in this beautiful Tula and also in the scuba quilt. So be ready for that. Make sure everything's quilted for that. Now, we have about 5 or 10 minutes left, and so we're going to go to the webinar and answer questions. But if you are watching this live on YouTube, please look at the bottom of the YouTube and you will see a link on resources that you can follow along. If you're watching this live, please go follow my YouTube line. We don't get all the videos up right away, but when we do get them up, you will get a notification that a new YouTube came up. So thank you for attending. We'll see you next week, and stay tuned right now. We're going to go live and answer questions in the chat. So go to your chat, type in a question, and I'm going to come around and we're going to answer those questions live.